must learn to love. We must learn to love. We must learn. We must learn to Hearts open, shout, awake, much to learn from our mistakes. Draw us closer in our heartache. Show us how to love. 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 Show us how to
If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains and do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part. Then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love.
Though I may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire, but have not love, my words are vain as something brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not give my love within, the prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, our spirits long to
Greta, and of course here's Arlo. And Arlo, you're not going to be in the video today. Luckily, Pastor Ann gave Arlo this really nice bone, so we're going to give this to Arlo right now, and Arlo's going to go away. Good boy. Okay, bye, Arlo. So Greta's here with me today because I think sometimes the children's message should actually be delivered by a child. And this was the perfect opportunity to have Greta come and deliver a message because the Bible passage we're talking about today is one that she knows, both the words, and she's been learning American Sign Language over the summer, and she knows how to sign this also. So she's going to teach us the Great Commandment. We're going to go over the words first, and then she is going to teach me and all of you how to do this in sign language. So thanks for being here, Greta. I hope I do a good job with this.
Thank you for having me in this wonderful living room.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Anytime.
I hope so. The words are love the Lord, your God, with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. So we're gonna sign that.
Okay.
Assume the
Assume
ASL
signing
position. Okay.
All right.
Love.
I know love.
Like you're giving a
Love.
socially distant hug.
Love.
Love the Lord.
The Lord.
An L shape. So you want to take your left hand. You want to make an L shape,
So we're point up.
and then you point down
And
with
you
the
point
L.
down with the
Love
L.
the Lord. And then you want to do like a
Love
little
the Lord.
forehead thumbs up.
Thumbs up, forehead.
Your God. Your God.
Your God. Your God.
Now, so thumbs up. Your God.
Your God.
With all. So this is all. With all. So now you can also sign all like this, but that's not in its right context. So this all is like the whole package. So with all,
It feels like the
Your-
whole package when you do that.
yeah, all
All.
your heart. So you want to take your hands, two middle fingers, and you want to make a heart shape on your chest. With all your heart,
All your heart.
all
All.
your soul. So you just want to take your
Soul.
hand, soul, all your soul, but you point with all your fingers, not just this. Your soul, all your mind.
Oh, an easy one.
Yeah. All your strengths. You want to do this. All your strength, and you put them in. So I'm going to do it frontward facing. All your strength. All your strength. The Lord, our God.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs
Down.
up, down. The Lord
The Lord.
is one.
Can you do his one? I didn't see.
Is one. So there's
Is
no
one.
more L shape here.
Is
Just
one.
smack that hand down in the
Is
lap.
one.
Is one.
Okay.
Okay. So let's have a little review.
Yes, please.
Love
Love.
the Lord,
The Lord.
your God,
Your God. Thumbs up, hands down.
Mhm.
Your God.
with all
With all
your heart.
your heart. Middle fingers make the heart.
Mhm.
Mhm.
All your soul.
Your soul.
All
All
your mind.
your mind.
All
your
your strength.
strength.
Lord,
Oh, the Lord.
our
Our
God.
God.
The Lord.
The
The
Lord.
Lord is one.
Is one. Thanks, Greta. I'm gonna have to
Thank you.
practice that, but luckily this is a video, so we can rewind it and rewatch. That was as much, if not more fun than learning a TikTok dance. Thanks for being here. All right, bye everybody. See you next week.
Just then, a religion scholar stood up with a question to test Jesus. Teacher, what do I need to do to get eternal life? Jesus answered, What's written in God's law? How do you interpret it? He said that you love the Lord your God with all your passion and prayer and muscle and intelligence, and that you love your neighbor as well as you do yourself. Good answer, said Jesus. Now do it and you'll live. Looking for a loophole, he asked, and just how would you define neighbor? Jesus answered by telling a story. There was once a man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho. On the way, he was attacked by robbers. They took his clothes, beat him up, and went off, leaving him half dead. Luckily, a priest was on his way down the same road. But when he saw him, he angled across to the other side. Then a Levite religious man showed up. He also avoided the injured man. A Samaritan traveling the road came on him. When he saw the man's condition, his heart went out to him. He gave him first aid, disinfecting and bandaging his wounds. Then he lifted him onto his donkey, led him to an inn, and made him comfortable. In the morning, he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take good care of him. If it costs any more, put it on my bill. I'll pay you on my way back." What do you think? Which of these 3 became a neighbor to the man attacked by robbers? Asked Jesus. The one who treated him kindly, the religion scholar responded. Jesus said, "Go and do the same."
I think it's fitting that the pandemic began here in the U.S. during Lent. Because if there ever was a modern analogy to Israelites wandering in the wilderness, this is it. As they struggled to find a direction, the Bible tells us God led them with a cloud by day and a big pillar of fire by night. And it's not a stretch to say that we could use something that's that obvious as well. In difficult times when grief is thick and days are hard, we need something simple. We don't have the energy for intellectual debates or fine distinctions. We need sort of a cloud shaped like a giant arrow that says, "Go that way," or a bright fiery pillar, something that makes the way to safety clear. The good news is, I think the Bible has exactly that. Of course, the Bible has plenty of things that aren't that clear, things for people to argue about and get confused over or angry over. But when it comes to the most important issues, it also has passages that put all that confusing stuff to one side and say to us, I know it seems complicated, but what it boils down to is this. And of all those places, there are 2 that have always stood out for me. The first is in the passage that you've probably heard at many weddings and almost as many funerals. It's the love chapter in 1 Corinthians 13. The passage that explains the characteristics of love and points out in its final verse that it's love that's greater than all the rest. It's not only greater than hope, it's greater even than faith. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these 3. And the greatest of these is love. There's very little that needs interpretation or explaining in that entire chapter. When Paul says, if you don't have love, you're like a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal, I imagine most of us have certain people that come to mind who we've experienced as noisy gongs and clanging cymbals. Those who talk the talk but don't walk the walk aren't just ineffective. They're painfully obnoxious. They turn people away from faith and make people cover their ears when they speak, even if they might hear that exact same message differently from someone else. Noisy gong and clanging cymbal seems to fit the bill. It doesn't matter, says Paul, if you donate huge sums of money, even if you give your own life. It doesn't matter if you can recite the Bible from memory or even have faith that can remove mountains. I mean, who has faith that can remove mountains? I know on many drive stuck in traffic. I've wished and tried to move Boston, but I can't even move the gas tank. So I don't know how you have faith that moves mountains, but even if you managed that, even if my faith could move the gas tank, it's worthless, says Paul, if you don't have love. And the way love is described here in 1 Corinthians 13 isn't some mystical experience that we have trouble identifying with. That too is plain. He says, love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. We know what those things are. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Moreover, it's eternal. Love never ends. That sentence is engraved on the granite bench that serves as the marker for my family burial plot in Vermont. I picked that verse so you can know it's not the first time or the last time you're going to hear it. There's a lot of Paul that's a real tough slog to read. That was true even at the time, and we know that because in the Bible, Peter confirms that Paul is hard to understand in his second letter, towards the end. But this chapter, 1 Corinthians 13, is crystal clear. If you're not starting from the place of love, as evidenced in the attitude Paul describes, patient, kind, and all the rest, then not even faith matters. Love is the first priority, the top of the pyramid, or as John tells us in his first letter, it's the very nature of God. 1 John 4:8, God is love. And we are made in God's image. Spiritual growth is not centered on increasing our faith, believing more intellectual doctrines, or gaining more knowledge about the Bible and the church. Noisy gongs can have all that and still remain spiritual infants. Spiritual growth, which happens over a lifetime, is about polishing the image of God within ourselves so that God's full unconditional love is mirrored back to ever-increasing clarity to everyone who looks at our lives. Spiritual growth is about growing in love. Want a concrete example of what that looks like? Come with me to the 10th chapter of the Gospel of Luke, and let's visit with Jesus and a lawyer who wants to know what he has to do to inherit eternal life. It's a pretty big question, and if you'd asked me that when I was in my late teens and early 20s, what I would have done was whipped out a tract with the 4 spiritual laws. Maybe you've heard of them. They're what the evangelical brand of Christianity sees as the core building blocks of faith, and they're built around passages from Paul's writings and the Gospel of John. And they're not bad things, but it's not the starting place. Their answer to the lawyer's question is that to be saved, you need to have faith in Jesus. So it seems worth looking to see how Jesus himself answers the question that the lawyer asks. What must I do to inherit eternal life? How does Jesus respond to that? Well, we see in Luke 10, knowing that the man is well versed in the law of Moses, that's what he's a lawyer in. He's a lawyer in the law of Moses. Pharisees are often called. Jesus does what he frequently does when answering questions. He turns the question back on the man. What's written in the law, you lawyer, sir? What do you read there? The man answers, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Now, you might recognize that as what we Christians have come to call the Great Commandment. But Jesus didn't make that up. The lawyer isn't quoting Jesus when he gives that answer. He's quoting two passages from the Bible Jesus used, the Hebrew Scriptures. The part about loving God with all you've got is from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5, and the love your neighbor as yourself part comes from the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 18. The great rabbis of the age had already determined that those two things together summed up the law of Moses, and both Jesus and the lawyer knew it. Jesus then confirms it by saying, "You have given the right answer. Do this and you will live." No four spiritual laws there. No confessing that you're a sinner or professing faith. It turns out that we inherit eternal life not by what we believe in our heads or say with our lips, but by the way we show forth the love of God in our lives, which is what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13. That's not to say faith is unimportant. Don't mishear me on that. But it's not the most important thing. The greatest of these, says Paul, is love. You can get the faith part wrong and still march right through those pearly gates. There is no theology quiz. You don't have to present your Sunday school pins or a baptismal ID. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself, and eternal life is yours. Jesus says so in plain and simple language. Miss love, Paul says, and the rest is only so much noise. But the lawyer in Luke isn't quite done, even though he was able to answer his own question. You suspect he probably could answer this question too, but he's checking. And it's in his follow-up question that we see that maybe he's actually looking for a loophole in that law that he understood so well. Who is my neighbor, he asks. It seems love your neighbor as yourself is a bit too broad for him. Surely there's some further definition. Who is my neighbor exactly? Neighbor really can't mean like everybody, can it? If we're honest, we all have that question at some time or other. When I lived in Plymouth, I had a literal neighbor a few houses down who my Facebook friends all knew as my neighbor from hell. I even wrote lyrics for a song about him. The chorus went, "He's my neighbor from hell, so let's be realistic. I'm all for love your neighbor, but do we have to be specific? I'll give money to the starving, I'll support the ne'er-do-well, but Lord, please don't make me love my neighbor from hell." So, I get it. At one time or another, we are all that lawyer, standing in front of Jesus, imagining a very specific person or group of people and asking, can I get a waiver for this one? Can we narrow the definition of neighbor in a way that doesn't require me to include them? And so we ask with the lawyer, and who is my neighbor? On this, we'd like the Bible to be a bit more complicated and demanding and open to interpretation so we can sort of squirm our way out of it. But Jesus is having none of that here. That big arrow cloud of love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself, isn't a legal concept to be parsed. It's a clear guide for how to get to the promised land of eternal life, a life with God, a life that mirrors the loving image of God in brilliant clarity to all who look. And on the off chance that the man doesn't really understand, Jesus backs it up with a story. We've come to know that story as the parable of the Good Samaritan. And it's famous enough that charitable organizations from hospitals to suicide hotlines bear the name Samaritan. But what's often lost in translation is that making the Samaritan a hero of a story told to a Jewish audience would not have been well received. To say the Jews and Samaritans of Jesus' day didn't get along is a gross understatement. If you want to get a contemporary version of how that hero might have impacted the lawyer hearing it from Jesus, think of the story being told today at either the Democratic or Republican national conventions and having the hero of the story be a major figure from the other party. That's how it would have been received. But however much the story may have stung when the lawyer heard it, there was no debating the point. And to drive it home, Jesus flips the tables again and turns the question back on the lawyer. So, confirm this for me. Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who was robbed? The man responds with the obvious, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus then finishes up with the instruction, go and do likewise. In saying that, Jesus also subtly shifts the focus of the question. The lawyer wanted to know who he could exclude under the love your neighbor command. Who was a neighbor and who maybe wasn't. But Jesus reframed the question. By the end, it was no longer about the man's ability to identify who was a neighbor to him. It was now about his own willingness to be a neighbor to others. Never mind them, Jesus is saying. Your job is to make sure you are the one who shows mercy, that you are the one who stops when someone, anyone, is hurting, and that you care for them as you would for yourself. Never mind all the noisy gongs out there and whatever they're doing. To inherit eternal life, you are the one who needs to love. Without condition, without exception. The lawyer has no further questions because by now it's obvious. The cloud is the cloud and the pillar is the pillar and you just follow it. And if it leads to a person in a ditch, you don't stop and ask whether the person deserves your help or is part of a group you approve of or whether the word neighbor really applies to that one there. You help because that's what loving God in the world looks like. Do this, says Jesus, and you will live. It's as plain as the judgment scene in Matthew 25, which is the only place in the Bible that Jesus describes how we will be judged. I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was sick and in prison and you visited me. It's all the same message, the cloud and pillar that you can see no matter how dusty and difficult the road. It asks us to focus, to look around. What do we see? What are the needs? Whether you like those people or not, whether you think they deserve their plight or not, doesn't matter. Care for them as you would care for yourself, even if everybody else is crossing the road and going on by without a glance. That's what fulfilling the great commandment looks like. How do we love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength? We do it by loving our neighbor as ourselves. That's why those two things go together. That simple command is how we inherit eternal life as individuals. And it's what we can do when the enormity of grief and anxiety around us seems too difficult to bear. The advice Mr. Rogers gave to children in such difficult circumstances was to look for the helpers. The advice Jesus gives is to be the helper, to do the kind thing, the patient thing, the thing that's not boastful or arrogant or rude, that doesn't insist on its own way. Faith and hope are important things, but they are the fruit that comes from a life of love. Faith does not produce love. It's the other way around. God's love comes to us free for the taking as we are, no matter what we've done or how badly we've messed up. But that love isn't for us to hoard. As those made in God's image, our job is to reflect God's love back to the world in love and service. In doing so, in loving God through loving our neighbors as ourselves, we then receive everything: faith, hope, eternal life, all of it. If you want your spiritual life to grow, start practicing love. Start small, like we did last week in just pouring out a little bit of water on a patch of dry ground. Start with the easy stuff: puppies, butterflies, whatever. Loving our enemies is a tall order. Don't start there. That's down the road. Most of us still haven't really mastered loving our own friends and family. We won't do it overnight. The spirit of love grows within us like a tree over a lifetime. As we practice and as we tend that tree, we'll discover that faith and hope and all the other virtues that everyone talks about are growing right there in the branches of our tree of love. The greatest of these is love. We need that first, then all the rest will follow. The Creator's nature is love. Everything that ever was or ever will be starts there.
We return to God a portion of what has been given to us for God's work in our shared ministry. Friends and members are asked to prayerfully consider giving in support of Crawford's ministries and operations. You can give electronically by clicking the button in the weekly messenger or on our website, or you can mail a check to 34 Dick Street, Winchester, Mass. 01890. Thank you.
Jesus, nothing compares to this grace that rescues me. Savior, now and forever, your face is all I see. Now all I
The benediction is called To Come Home to Yourself. From To Bless the Space Between Us by John O'Donohue. May all that is unforgiven in you be released. May your fears yield their deepest tranquillities. May all that is unlived in you blossom into a future graced with love.